The gym lights buzzed overhead like they always did, a constant low hum that filled the silence between whistles and shouted drills. It had become background noise to most of the guys, but for me, it always sounded like pressure, like the inside of my skull when I was trying not to think too hard, not to feel too much. Coach's whistle finally cut through the air. That's it. Wrap it up. We'd been running scrimmage plays for an hour straight, and every muscle in my body ached like someone had wrung me out and left me hanging. I pretended to stretch while the others celebrated the end of practice, tossing their helmets, clapping each other on the back, laughing like the world had never hurt them. Was quiet. I always was. I stayed near the edge of the group, the way I always stayed near the edge of everything. Invisible was easier, quieter, safer. "Hey, Ryan," one of the guys called as he passed me, grinning. "You gonna stop prancing and actually throw a real block next time?" Another voice chimed in, louder, sharper. "Dude hits like a Broadway dancer," someone laughed. Then someone else. Not at me, not directly, just around me, over me. It wasn't the first time. I didn't say anything. Just forced a dry smile and kept moving. My cleats scraped the dirt as I walked toward the locker room, trailing behind the pack. I could feel my throat tightening, the sting behind my eyes starting before I even reached the door. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep it down, pressing my lips together until they went numb. Inside the locker room, the air was warm and stale, sweat, old socks, and spray deodorant mixing into something almost solid. The team poured in around me, still laughing, still loud, still alive in ways I couldn't quite touch. I moved fast, grabbing my bag, ducking my head, acting like I was looking for something in my locker just to delay the moment. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go anywhere. One by one, the guys trickled out. The laughter faded, the water shut off in the showers. The room emptied. And I was still sitting there, on the wooden bench, staring at the inside of my locker like it might suddenly offer me an answer. I didn't even know what broke me. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way the air felt too still. Or maybe it was the 100 other things I hadn't let myself feel all week. All year. I lowered my head, elbows on my knees, and the tears came without warning. Sharp, and sudden, and awful. No sobs, not at first. Just wet. Just trembling. I told myself I'd cry for 5 seconds, maybe 10, and then I'd pull it together and leave. But I didn't. I couldn't. My body just stayed there, folded in, shaking like something small and hunted. The thing is, I wasn't crying because of what they said. Not really. I was crying because of everything they didn't know about me. Everything I'd been shoving down for years, just to make it through practice, just to survive the locker room. Just to get by without someone looking at me too long, too hard, and seeing what I was trying to hide. I didn't even hate myself. Not anymore. I was just tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of not being seen. The sound of the door opening made my heart drop like a weight inside my chest. Footsteps. Crisp. Heavy. Familiar. Shit. I wiped at my face, fast and messy, swiping my sleeve across my eyes and trying to straighten up. I turned slightly toward the wall, pretending to dig for something in my gym bag. My breath came short, uneven. I couldn't look up. The footsteps came closer, then stopped. Right beside me. I didn't dare move. My skin prickled like I'd been caught doing something wrong. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow shift, then a figure lower down onto the bench beside me. Not close, not touching, just near. Coach. My stomach flipped. A dozen excuses rushed into my brain, scrambling over each other. I could say I wasn't feeling well. I could say I had something in my eye. I could say anything but the truth. But he didn't say anything. He didn't clear his throat or offer some awkward attempt at small talk. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just sat there. The silence between us was thick, but somehow it wasn't uncomfortable. Not like I expected. It didn't feel like he was waiting for me to explain myself or clean myself up. It felt like he was waiting with me. Like he wasn't afraid of the silence. I kept my head down, fists clenched in my lap, eyes burning even though I'd already cried everything out. Part of me wanted him to leave. The other part, the bigger part, wanted him to stay, to say something, anything, or maybe nothing at all. I could feel his presence next to me, grounded, quiet, steady, not judging, not running, just there, and that meant more than I could process in that moment. I didn't want him to see me like this. But he didn't look away. I sat there for a long time, not moving. My breathing was shallow, like even air had become something I had to earn. I couldn't look at him, at Coach, but I could feel him beside me, steady and unmoving. The silence between us wasn't harsh. It didn't pressure me to talk or explain or make myself palatable. It was just there, gentle, strange. It would have been easier if he had said something stupid, told me to man up, or asked what was wrong, or tried to act like he hadn't noticed the breakdown I'd just had. But he didn't. He just sat there like he understood that sometimes presence meant more than any words. Eventually, I let out a shaky breath. Not a sigh exactly, more like a soft surrender. I unclenched my fists, my palms were damp. Coach shifted beside me. Not toward me, not away. Just adjusted himself like he was getting comfortable on the hard bench. It was a small thing, but it felt important, like he wasn't planning on leaving anytime soon. "I've seen it," he said quietly. His voice surprised me. Not just because it broke the silence, but because of how soft it was. Not the voice he used on the field, barking orders. This one was lower, calmer. "I've seen the way you carry it, whatever it is." I stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on the opposite row of lockers. My throat was tight again, like a dam barely holding back something old and dangerous. "You've been holding it in a long time," he added. I nodded, just once. That was all I could manage. He didn't ask for more. Instead, he leaned back against the lockers, exhaling slowly, his shoulders sagging a little like he'd let something heavy go. "You know," he said after a beat, "when I was your age, I used to think silence was the only safe place." I glanced sideways, just enough to catch his profile. He wasn't looking at me. His gaze was on the floor, a small crease between his brows like he was watching a memory play out. I thought if I just kept quiet, kept my head down, trained hard, stayed invisible, I could avoid the weight of everything. He shook, his head lightly, a bitter smile flickering at the corner of his mouth. "I wasn't invisible," he said. "Just alone." There was something in his voice, not regret exactly, something deeper, familiar. I swallowed hard, words forming in my mouth and dissolving before I could say them. Coach rubbed his palms together, slowly. "I don't know what you're going through. Not exactly. But I recognize the signs." I finally spoke, voice hoarse. "What signs?" "The kind of tired you can't sleep off. The way you pretend you're okay until you're alone and you're not. The way you laugh at the jokes that hurt you just so no one will notice they do." I looked down. My eyes were burning again. He didn't push. He didn't fill the space with more stories or cheap advice. Instead, he leaned forward a little and placed his hand on the bench between us, not touching me, just there, open palm against the wood. It wasn't an invitation. It was permission. I stared at his hand, fingers slightly spread, calloused from years of weightlifting and rough training. Strong, still. And then I felt it, the quiet shift inside me, something loosening, something soft. I hadn't realized how much I'd been holding my breath until that moment. My chest rose, fuller this time, deeper. I didn't take his hand. I didn't move. But I didn't pull away either. For a while, we just sat like that. Two people sharing a silence that felt more honest than anything I'd ever said aloud. He didn't ask me to spill my secrets. He didn't ask me to make sense of myself. He didn't ask me to be anything but what I was. Scared, hurting, still figuring it out. And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't in a very long time. Seen. Not Inspected, not judged, just seen. He didn't ask me to explain myself. He just made it safe to breathe. The days after that night moved differently. Not because anyone knew. Not because anything had really changed on the surface. But because I had. Something inside me had cracked open. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't rush to seal it back up. Coach didn't bring it up. Not once. Not in words. But he didn't ignore it either. The next day at practice, when I ran a clean route and caught the pass in perfect stride, he gave me the smallest nod. Barely anything. But it felt like a lighthouse in fog. After that, I started to notice the way he checked in. Quiet things. A pat on the back that lingered half a second longer. A glance across the field when I looked like I was drifting. A low, "You good?" when the others weren't around. I never said much back. Sometimes I just nodded. But each time, it felt like he was throwing me a rope, not pulling, not forcing, just letting me know it was there if I wanted to grab it. I didn't talk to anyone else, not about what had happened, not about how I felt, not even about the weight that seemed to be slowly, imperceptibly, lifting off my chest. But I found myself staying late more often, stretching after the others left, sitting on the bleachers while he packed up cones and scribbled into his clipboard. Some nights we didn't say anything at all, just sat near each other. The silence didn't scare me anymore. It started to feel like its own kind of conversation, one that didn't demand anything, only offered room. Then came the night I remember most clearly. It was after a rough practice, the kind where everyone was sluggish, tempers flared, and coach was barking louder than usual. I'd gotten into a shouting match with another player. Nothing serious, just heat and frustration. But it left me shaken. I stayed behind after practice, hands trembling as I rolled my ankle out on the mat. Coach was putting away gear. He glanced at me but didn't say anything. Until I did. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" It came out of nowhere, surprising even me. My voice cracked a little. He turned to me slowly. "What do you mean?" I hesitated. Then, like, pretending you're fine. Pretending you don't care. Pretending you're not falling apart inside. He didn't answer right away. Just walked over, sat on the mat a few feet from me, and exhaled through his nose. "All the damn time," he said. I looked at him, really looked, and I saw it. The lines around his eyes, the way he carried himself like he had armor under his skin. He glanced at me, expression unreadable. "You don't have to be strong all the time, you know." That sentence, so simple, so gentle, hit me harder than anything else had. I stared at the floor. My breath caught. My chest ached. "I think I'm gay," I whispered. It wasn't loud. It wasn't confident. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the first breath after holding it in for too long. The air between us stilled. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't do anything I was bracing for. Just let the words hang there for a moment, like they belonged. Then he said it. "Okay. Just that, no. Are you sure? No, don't tell anyone. No, it's just a phase. Just okay." And somehow, it was everything. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt the tear hit my wrist. I wiped it away fast, embarrassed. But Coach didn't look away. He didn't look uncomfortable. He just sat there. With me. In it. "I've never said that out loud," I admitted, my voice rough. "Not to anyone." "Now you have." I laughed, just a little. It broke out of me like a crack in the ice. "That's it?" He smiled softly. "What did you expect? Confetti?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I thought maybe it would feel bigger." "It is big," he said. "But not because of what it changes, because of what it means." "What does it mean?" He looked at me, calm and sure. "That you're done pretending." I let that sit for a while. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. When we finally stood to leave, I felt lighter, not because the weight was gone, but because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore, and for the first time that felt like enough. After I said "I think I'm gay," and he said okay, nothing and everything changed. There were no announcements, no late-night text conversations, no deep dives into what it all meant. But there was a shift. Small, steady, like the ground under me had become just a little more solid. Coach didn't treat me differently. Not on the field. Not during drills. He still barked commands, still told me to pick up my damn feet if I lagged behind in sprints. But in the quiet moments, after practice, before team meetings, those brief pauses in the hallway, there was something else between us. Softness, a steadiness, a quiet tether made of things we didn't say. He didn't ask me to explain. I didn't ask him what he thought, but we kept finding each other in the in-between spaces. One morning, he texted me just 3 words. "You up? Run?" I stared at the screen for a second, surprised, before replying, "Yeah." "Where?" We met outside the school before sunrise. The track was damp with dew, the sky just beginning to fade from black to blue. Neither of us said much. We stretched, nodded, and started running. I didn't realize how much I needed it. The air in my lungs, the sound of our feet hitting the ground in sync, the feeling of motion without noise. No expectations, no pressure, just breath, just movement. After a few laps, we slowed to a walk. He handed me a bottle of water and motioned toward a bench near the far edge of the field. We sat, steam still rising off our bodies in the cool morning light. "I used to do this with someone," he said after a minute. I looked over. He wasn't looking at me, just watching the horizon. In college. His name was Mason. The name landed like a soft thud between us. He was my roommate, best friend. We did everything together. Late-night drives, early workouts, study marathons. All of it. I think everyone knew, even if we didn't. I said nothing. I didn't need to. His voice carried the weight of what he wasn't saying. "One night he kissed me," Coach said quietly. I kissed him back, then I panicked. He paused. A long one. I told him it was a mistake, that it couldn't happen again, that we'd ruin everything. I swallowed, the inside of my throat suddenly dry. "He left 2 weeks later," he finished. "Transferred out. I never saw him again." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent, like we were sitting in a memory too fragile to touch. "I didn't mean to hurt him," Coach said, finally looking at me. "I just didn't know how to let myself want something I wasn't allowed to want." I nodded, slowly. "I think about that too. What I might push away if I stay scared." He gave a soft laugh, not amused, more resigned. "You're already braver than I was." That didn't feel true. I still felt like a kid stumbling through a world with no map. But something in his voice made me sit a little straighter. We didn't talk after that. Just sipped coffee and watched the sun rise, golden light crawling up the bleachers and warming the track. And then, it happened. Our hands, resting on the bench between us, brushed. Lightly. Almost nothing. But neither of us moved away. That tiny contact felt louder than any kiss, any confession. It buzzed between us, a live wire humming just under the skin. He didn't look at me. I didn't look at him. But I felt him. The warmth of his fingers, the steadiness of his breathing, the unspoken question floating between us. Is this something we never said it aloud? We didn't have to. In that moment, I knew he felt it too. The possibility. The ache. But with that knowing came fear. Not of him. Not of what we felt. Of the world outside this bench. The team. The school. The whispered conversations that could become rumors, and the rumors that could become headlines. So we sat there. Still. Quiet. Side by side. And said nothing. But that nothing. It meant everything. We won that night. It wasn't just a win. It was a blowout. Final score, 42-10. I played hard, moved like I had something to prove, and maybe I did. Not to the other team, not to the guys on the field, to myself. The locker room after the game was chaos. Guys shouting, towels flying, jerseys being slapped into lockers with a kind of primal joy. My body buzzed with adrenaline, but beneath it, something colder moved. Something quieter. Even surrounded by celebration, I felt hollow. I showered quickly, dressed even faster. and slipped out before the team had finished breaking into post-game pizza and war stories. The halls were quiet, save for the occasional squeak of my shoes against the tile. I didn't know where I was heading until I saw the gym lights still on. Coach was there, alone, stretching in the middle of the floor. One knee bent forward, arms out, head down, completely focused. The air smelled like old sweat, floor polish, and victory. I stood in the doorway for a second, unsure if I should interrupt. Then he looked up and saw me. He didn't smile, but his face softened, like maybe he'd been expecting me, like maybe he knew I'd show up eventually. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "Not even close." He nodded toward the bench by the wall. "Sit." I walked over and dropped my bag, settling beside him. The gym was quiet now, just the distant thrum of the exit sign and the hum of ceiling lights. We didn't speak, at first. The silence felt thick, not awkward, just charged. Finally, I broke it. "You think we'll make playoffs?" He gave a small, thoughtful shrug. "If we keep playing like tonight, yeah. But you're not here to talk football." Swallowed. My mouth was dry. "No," I admitted. "I'm not." He sat down beside me, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze on the floor. "You played like something was chasing you tonight," he said. I huffed a weak laugh. "Yeah, probably myself." Coach looked over at me, not pressing, just present. Phew. Words came before I could stop them. "Have you ever wanted something you couldn't have?" He didn't blink. Didn't ask what I meant. He just looked at me and said, "Every day." The silence that followed nearly cracked me open. Our eyes met, and something passed between us. Something neither of us could pretend didn't exist anymore. It had been there for weeks, quiet, patient. But tonight it was loud, demanding. I don't remember moving. I don't remember deciding. But 1 second we were sitting apart, and the next we were close. Too close, our knees nearly touching. He hesitated. I did too. Everything inside me screamed, this is a line, one we couldn't uncross. But then his hand brushed mine. Not by accident this time. Not casual. Purposeful. My breath caught, and I didn't pull away. The room spun slightly, but not from fear, from the intensity of the moment, from how quiet it was and how loud it felt. Then he leaned in, and I did too. Our lips met. Not with urgency, not with lust, with fear, with hunger, with relief. The kiss was soft, searching, like we were both still, asking, is this okay? Even as we did it. His hand came up to my cheek, rough and warm, and I felt myself sink into the touch like I'd been waiting my whole life for it. When we pulled apart, the world didn't rush back in. There was just stillness. Stillness, and breath, and him. His eyes were glassy, and he looked at me like he saw every piece of me I'd been hiding. I didn't know what to say. Neither did he. We sat in the echo of it, what had just happened, what it meant, what it could mean. Finally, I whispered, "What do we do now?" He didn't answer. Not right away. He just looked down, rubbing his palms together slowly. And in the quiet, I knew. We'd crossed a line, and neither of us knew what came next. But neither of us regretted it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, his hand brushing mine, the gym lights casting that soft yellow glow over us, the kiss that felt like a whisper and a scream all at once. It played over and over in my mind, not like a memory, but like a question. What now? Part of me was still buzzing from it. The warmth, the confirmation, the rush of being wanted back. But underneath that, deeper and darker, lived something else. Fear. What if someone had seen us? What if someone found out? Worse, what if he regretted it? That thought chased me through every hour of that long, sleepless night. I kept hearing silence where there should have been footsteps. I imagined whispers in the locker room. I rehearsed excuses I'd never say. And I didn't know what to do with the ache in my chest that didn't feel like guilt. Just uncertainty, the Next morning, I skipped breakfast and went straight to school early. The halls were quiet, the sky outside still streaked with dawn. I sat in the locker room alone for a while, trying to breathe through the pressure building in my rib cage. I kept replaying the kiss over and over, not because I wanted to take it back. I didn't. I couldn't. I just didn't know how to hold it in a world that might not want it to exist. When the team started filtering in, I forced normal into my body. Joked, stretched, nodded when people talked to me, but I didn't look at him. Not yet. After practice, I lingered again, something that had become a pattern now, almost muscle memory. I didn't even have to ask myself why. Coach was in his office, seated behind his desk, flipping through game footage. I hesitated outside the doorway, heart banging like a drum. He looked up and held my gaze for a second that felt like a full breath. "Hey," he said softly. I stepped in, closed the door behind me, and sat across from him. "I'm sorry," I said. I didn't even know what for. He blinked. "For what?" For last night. For avoiding you. For not knowing what to say." He leaned back in his chair, arms folding over his chest, his expression calm. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready to say." That unraveled something in me. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Me neither. That surprised me more than it should have. I had convinced myself he'd moved on already. Buried it, locked it up, filed it under mistake, and shouldn't have happened, but he hadn't. I keep asking myself if it was wrong, I admitted. "And what do you keep answering?" I hesitated. "It didn't feel wrong." He nodded. "It didn't to me either." Silence stretched between us, not heavy this time, but open, like a door neither of us was sure how to walk through. "I don't regret it," he said finally, his voice steady. "But I'll follow your lead. Always." That hit hard. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't trying to control the situation. He was giving me space. Not just to choose him, but to choose myself. On my own terms. I looked at him for a long time. Really looked. And then I said what I'd been holding back since that kiss. "I'm scared." "I know," he said. "I'm scared that if anyone finds out, you'll lose everything." "That I will." He nodded. "I've lived in that fear a long time." I rubbed my hands together, heart pounding in my throat. "But I don't want to. Pretend it didn't happen." "Then don't," he said. "Let it be what it is. Quiet, real, just ours." There was no grand plan, no contract, no rules to follow. But in that moment, we came to a decision together. Not with a kiss, not with a dramatic speech, just with stillness and honesty. We wouldn't tell anyone. Not now. We'd be careful, thoughtful, slow. We weren't rushing into a romance. We were walking into a connection we both knew had been growing for weeks, maybe months. Something built not on temptation, but on presence. On knowing. On trust. I stood up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and walked to the door. Then I paused. "Will this get easier?" I asked. He smiled, soft, sad, hopeful. "Maybe not. But you get stronger." That stayed with me all day, and that night, as I sat on my bed, the quiet hum of the city outside my window, I let myself feel it. All of it. The fear. The ache. The spark. And the strange, beautiful relief that came with being seen. Not just as a player, or a student, or a body in a jersey, but as me. For so long, I thought the locker room would be the place I broke, but it became the place I began. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like you had to hide who you are, know that you're not alone. Sometimes, the quietest moments lead us to the loudest truths about ourselves. Let me know in the comments, have you ever found connection in an unexpected place? I'd love to hear your story. And where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country below. It means so much to know how far these stories travel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories like this. Stories about love, identity, and the courage to be seen.